Welcome back to the Career Growth Podcast, where we talk about all things related to building a successful career. Joining me today is my colleague Nan, a senior recruitment specialist at Capital Placement. And we're going to be talking about something that a lot of people had pretty interesting questions about. And these are some workplace requests, which reasonably sound pretty unusual to anyone who's just starting out in their careers or has never had a, full-time or even a part-time job. Hi, Nan. How are you doing?
Hello, Kaylis. I'm doing great, thank you. How are you?
Not too bad. And thank you
Not
so
too
much for
bad.
joining us. Yeah, thank
You're
you for
most
joining
welcome.
us.
So glad to be back on the CP podcast studio.
Woohoo. And just FYI, everyone, the team's actually in Vietnam right now.
Yeah, yes, we are, and it's scorching hot. Like it's so hot. But
Oh,
yeah, we're making the most out of it. So it's great. It's really great.
yeah, it's pretty hot over here as well, so that's extremely relatable. I think
Yeah,
we're all kind of just burning our
yeah,
outer skins off,
yeah.
But hope you've been having fun over there. I'm really
Yes,
missing
we
the team
have.
myself. It's a lot
Yeah,
less
no, sure.
chaotic back here, though.
Oh, I can imagine. I can imagine. No, we're having a lot of fun, just creating memories together. So yeah.
Yeah,
Taking a lot of
yeah.
pictures. Yeah, it's really fun.
I haven't been getting as many Slack notifications lately, and
That's a
the
good
FOMO
problem
is
to
hitting me
have.
pretty hard.
Enjoy it. Enjoy it while it lasts. Okay.
I will. Well, so Nan, the reason why we're going to be talking about unusual workplace requests or behaviors today is because a lot of people do, have concerns about certain things like dress codes, strict dress
Hmm.
codes, or like work timings and calling in, to take over a shift on the weekends when you don't work weekends. These
Yeah.
are things that, you get familiar with over the course of your career
Hmm.
and pretty early on even. So we just want to answer some of those questions, some of the things that we personally have experienced, and we'll also
Yeah.
be visiting the internet's favorite place to dissect drama, aka Reddit, to
Oh
look at some
dear.
stories on there as well.
Okay. That
Yeah.
sounds good.
Yes. So the number one thing that is the easiest to tackle is dress codes. We all know that certain companies would have very specific dress codes, whereas other companies would have PJ Fridays, where you could literally show up to work on a on a Friday in your pajamas, which is
Yeah.
quite frankly, I would love to do that because I've got some really cool pajamas. But that
Mhm.
aside, could you tell us why do these companies have dress codes in the first place? Like, what are they trying to accomplish from that?
Okay, so I think there are various reasons, but I would think like the main one would be displaying a sense of professionalism in the workplace and also just allowing everyone to, lack of a better word, but like for everyone to look the same or look the part in the sense that you know, you are working for a specific company, therefore you'll be perceived as you are the brand ambassador for that company, right? So I think most companies would actually want, everyone to look the same in the workplace. But yeah, I don't know. What do you think though?
I also feel like that. Like, I'm sure that, for more client facing roles, you would need to present in a certain way because you'd be representing the company, you would be the face and the voice
Yeah,
in that moment. So I do understand it.
exactly.
But do we have a dress code at CP? Because I don't ever recall getting any guidelines on dress codes. It's just like, just be comfortable and make sure you're dressed. Just be dressed.
Yeah,
Wear clothes.
yeah. Mm,
Those,
wear clothes,
that's it.
exactly. Put on some clothes. I think
Sorry.
that's the only. Yeah, no, honestly, at CP, we don't have a dress code. As long as you show up to work and you're comfortable, whether you want to wear the brightest t-shirt or, I don't know, like could be some patterned dress or whatever it may be, it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, it is a personal choice. So, but obviously within my role though, it does entail a lot of client facing. So whether I'm dealing with different employers or I'm having interviews with candidates, I need to always ensure that I look presentable and also comfortable. But I think for me as an extra, thing that have always been passionate about fashion. So I enjoy just dressing up every day. Even though I work remotely, I just love just, put in the effort, do my makeup, wear my jewelries, whether I want to put on some scarves, So it really does depend on the individual. But when it comes to CP, you're free to be yourself as long as you look comfortable and you are comfortable, yeah.
Okay, that makes sense, but it also kind of illustrates this spectrum that we have of companies, what they expect and what they don't expect from their employees in terms of dress code, which I think is super helpful because not every company is still
Yeah.
clinging on to that old school traditional
Yeah.
way of looking at dress codes. But
Mm.
this kind of leads us to our first Reddit story for this session, where someone receives a rather iffy message from, we can assume, is supposed to be a company they're interviewing at. So I'm just going to read it out. I'm going to read it as it is, so don't come for me. Don't shoot the messenger, folks. Okay? They received a message saying, please read the job description and follow the dress code. Example, leggings, skirt, etc. Make sure you look attractive. Your job is to convince the owner to hire you. What do you
Interesting.
think about that? Do you think that
Okay.
it's their job to convince them to hire you? Is this proper use of a dress code? Is it? Let's be honest.
No. No, I mean, if you go for an interview and, you want to get the job, you want to convince the employer to hire you for, the role. Obviously, you want to be comfortable, first of all. So if you're comfortable wearing leggings or a skirt, then go ahead. But if you're not, rather not, rather put something else on. But I don't think it would fit the appropriate attire for an interview. Yeah, that's just my opinion. What do you think, Kaylis?
I'm just saying it's the bit about make sure you look attractive. Your job is to convince the owner to hire you. That's putting me off so much because why
Yeah,
is looking attractive kind of the focal point? It's like
exactly.
look presentable would have been different. The connotation
Mhm.
behind the word attractive is what's throwing me off quite a bit.
Yeah,
I think it's also an issue. Like a lot of discourse online is, oh, they want us, like women and girls who are, working. Let's just wear short skirts, or you need to wear heels. There are
yeah,
these requirements, these
hmm
extremely specific, hyper-specific requirements that they might not be comfortable with. But
yeah,
it's about like we do need to talk about it 100%. We can't just pretend it doesn't happen, isn't it? But
absolutely.
what
Yeah,
would be like a good response to this though? Like, is this a? I feel like this might be a red flag. Like, don't interview
yeah,
here.
definitely. Oh, without a doubt, yeah, that would be a red flag, a huge one. I'll say, look, yeah, rather I would, yeah, if I was a candidate, I'll possibly just ask for clarification, like follow up, hey,
Yeah,
just to double check, is this what you mean by this email? But I think if we were to rephrase the email, I would definitely remove the examples of, leggings, skirt, etc., and make sure you look attractive. Because as you
yeah,
mentioned, and I fully agree with this, it's not really the candidate's job to convince the employer to get the job by how they're dressed, by looking
yeah,
attractive. I feel
yeah,
when it comes to the interview, like the employer is actually looking at the fact that this person can they do the job? Are they the right fit for the role as well as the company? So when it comes to how they look in terms of attractiveness and so forth, it's irrelevant. So I think definitely to rephrase that email it should basically go along the lines of make sure you look, presentable for the interview, and yeah, that's it really. The
That's all
candidate
the
is
advice
always,
you really need.
exactly, I mean, you can obviously do yourself a favor and just to, as a candidate, to do research. What does it mean to look presentable for an interview? As a guide for yourself. But yeah, so in terms of that email per se, it's really not appropriate. Yeah, especially
Yeah.
the part where they emphasize on the fact that you need to look, attractive, and yeah, it's just not really necessary, I guess. Yeah,
Yeah.
what do you think? You agree?
I mean, I agree with you absolutely. And
Mm.
dress codes can be used for good or evil. And as we can see, we've covered both sides of it. Pajama
Exactly.
Fridays, PJ Fridays, good. This,
PJ
bad.
Friday.
Know
It's
the
like it's a theme,
difference.
right? Fridays, or like I know some
Yeah.
companies will have Fridays and you're wearing jeans, like
Yeah.
just denim, or that's pretty
Yeah.
cool, But
That is.
yeah, I think it does go with the theme, and the theme for that week or that month. But it's also really nice
Hmm.
because you get the whole team involved, and it's just fun. You look forward to it. But yeah.
Yeah. Agreed. But you know how dress codes can, you can drop a dress code when you go home, right? You don't have to wear the same things that your office requires you to wear at home. You don't have to do that.
Yeah.
But I've noticed a trend, and I'm not sure if it's a
Hmm.
good thing or a bad thing, but I've noticed a trend of a certain kind of workplace thing that's finding its way into non work environments. How do I put this politely?
Okay.
The usage of specific jargon, like we call it
Oh,
corpo talk, right? Corpo talk,
yeah.
basically. Oh, let's circle back to this, or I'll send this by EOD. Things that
Yeah.
are utilized within a workspace, making its way into my friend groups. I'm like, hey, could you like could you like transfer the cash you owe me for that pizza? Yeah, man, I'll send it
Yeah.
to you EOD. Do I
Uh-huh.
look like I'm your coworker? Do I know your mom. I personally know your mom, and I will tell her, do not test me. But
Yeah.
so very
Yeah.
much unlike that uniform, right? Like earlier we discussed how, companies opt for dress codes because it's like a uniform,
Yeah.
makes everyone, it's equalizer, it's a good
Yeah.
equalizer. But
Hmm.
the thing about this is, this you can take a uniform off at the end of the day, but can you stop utilizing corpo talk at the end of the day? And here's the thing, and here's why I'm interested, because I was talking to Angel before
Okay.
about this as well. And Angel
Yeah.
was like, it's just pretty straightforward and simple to communicate the way that we communicate in this sphere. Maybe that's why people are utilizing it. What are your thoughts on that? Does it like help clarify things faster? Is it just easier to communicate?
Yeah, definitely. I think it obviously does depend the company that you're at, and also the industry, because I know within the tech industry, they speak a certain way. They've got these jargon that they use, and it clicks. Obviously, that person understands what they are requested, to be done at the end. But it can be a bit confusing if you're not too familiar and you're coming from the outside, and now you need to transition, into the culture of, okay, this is how they speak here. It definitely will be confusing in the beginning, but then after a while you're able to, catch on, like, oh, okay, this actually means this. I have been in a, scenario like that before, especially early in my career. I was like, oh well, I didn't know that term actually means this, but you eventually,
Yeah,
you catch on, and you're like, okay, it becomes more effective and easier just to communicate, because now you all speak the same language. You don't need to take too much time, and it's also, you don't necessarily get offended in any way, because you're just able to understand what is expected of you. Whereas before, if you're coming from, the outside, and now you need to transition and you have no knowledge in terms of how they communicate, and you maybe he
Yeah.
may be taken a bit back. In the beginning, it's like, oh, okay, that's a bit, weird. Why would they talk to me in that way? But then eventually, after observing and like just seeing things, how they done, like, oh, okay, it's actually normal. This is how they speak here. And you're like, okay, cool. And then you also,
Yeah.
transition into that way of speaking. And yeah, I guess it
Yeah.
also becomes fun. Um, yeah, it does because you're
Which
like, oh,
is,
okay,
it's
I'm
funny
learning new
because
things.
CP's corporate language is pushing everyone into the pool.
Oh, that, yes. There's been a few of those. There are a
One
few of
reason
those.
why. One reason why everyone's on the same page is because we only speak in push people into the pool. The boss, the intern, and everyone in between gets pushed in the pool. That's the only
Yeah.
way. But don't you feel
Yeah.
like EOD circle back? I think this it's very much it's straightforward. It's pretty clear, and you don't have to add on to it to make it more
Yeah.
palatable to
Yeah.
people. So because everyone understands what it means, and there is no hostility
Exactly.
because it is yes, it's a bit clinical, it's a bit robotic, but there is no malice behind it. You could
Yeah.
save time doing that. But also, imagine your friend is just really, really upset, and you just walk up to them like, I'll get back to you EOD.
No, you can't do that.
Pat, pat. That would be really
Oh,
awkward.
that's bullshit. Really awkward. Yeah.
Let's touch
But
base next
yeah.
week.
Yeah, no, that's there's a time and place for everything, and I guess when it comes to jargon, obviously we use that within the workplace. We wouldn't really
Yeah.
use that within our personal circles with our friends or
Yeah.
family. So I remember when I had just transitioned, into a different industry, and they use certain jargons, and I didn't know what it means, and I didn't really want to ask like, hey, what do you mean by that? So I literally went to Google and I just typed in the jargon on there, like, oh, okay, yeah, this
All
makes
right.
sense. Okay, cool. So I would occasionally do that if I learn a new one, like, oh, okay, that was something new. Let me quickly go on Google. If Google is there, if not, like, hey, what do you mean by
Yeah.
that? Care sharing. But yeah, after that, obviously, it does stick. But yeah,
Yeah.
definitely when it comes to friends, family, I wouldn't say, hey, let's touch base next week on that. Or I'll circle back, on that. A bit doesn't really gel well, I guess, with
Yeah.
the relation that you have with that person. But within the workplace, it does make sense as to why we
Yes.
use those certain, terminologies and jargon.
Yeah,
Yeah.
agreed. Agreed. There is always a time and place. You wear your school uniform to school, you can't go to a wedding in it. And that's how we're going to treat copper talk.
Exactly.
So, but there's
That's
another thing that we could definitely view through the same lens, and that's organizational
mhm.
hierarchies, because we are
Yeah.
used to hierarchies in different parts of our life. Like when we're born, we have our parents, and we have to listen to our parents. We go to school, the
Yeah.
teachers, and then we have the principal, so on and so forth. We're used to different kinds of hierarchies in our lives. But the organizational one can be a bit tricky to navigate, especially if if you have flat structures and you have like more traditional
Mm,
structures, you have these open teams. There are so many different ways that people deal with
yeah.
organizational hierarchies nowadays. But what do
Yeah.
you think about let's use CP as an example because it's the
Mhm.
easiest for us to sort of like relate to and talk
Yeah.
about it. CP, we have a pretty small team, right? How do
Yeah.
you view like our organizational structure? How is it different to the traditional structure, do you think?
Cool.
Yeah.
So,
You could be honest about it.
can I?
Oh,
Okay.
no,
Um,
no,
Obviously,
wait.
like
We're
when
just joking.
yeah, no, no, it is a startup, flat structure and so forth, and I think it always be like that. Um, my background, it was from a strict, structured organization where there was, strict hierarchy in place. So that was very different when I transitioned to the flat structure. But it makes sense as to why we have, hierarchy in the workplace. And it also does make sense as to why we don't have it, But in the same breath, looking at CP, yes, we are flat structure and so forth, but I think we are starting to realize the importance of having, hierarchy in the organization. It doesn't have to be as overemphasized as it is in the, big organizations, but it does help when it comes to having, that structure in place and just knowing, okay, certain teams is how they run and they're able to report, to this person and to be guided by that, individual and so forth. I think
Yeah.
when I first joined, we were pretty small, I think less than 10. Now it's double, and I know that it will be triple very soon in terms of team size. So I think as the team, as a company does continue evolving, hierarchy will start, forming. Yes, um, it may not be as, overly emphasized as it is, sorry, in the big organizations, but it is needed, just to enforce that structure into the business.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think you'd want to add on like anything to that? Like what has been your experience when it comes to that?
Well, my personal experiences, I've worked in mostly creative roles, but I have also worked in a
Okay.
very traditional. Yes, I've also worked in like a
Traditional.
traditional structure. I've experienced that,
Mm,
and the issue with personally for me is that the traditional structure no longer works because of the work itself. Like multiple different
yeah.
layers and levels by the time it actually reaches point A to point C, it's been too long. But
Yeah.
the more open structures that we have today enables free flowing information, keeping everyone in the loop, but allowing people to work on what they need to work on with minimal micromanagement, which just means more
Yeah.
time for everybody else as well, and things are just less
Absolutely.
cluttered. So I think that is
Yeah.
just the general shift, because I don't think that anyone really wants to go back to like the 1900s
Yeah.
style of doing things.
No, no, no.
People like having a
We're
bit more
only moving
freedom and
forward, not
control.
backwards.
Forwards, onwards.
Yeah.
But it's not that there's anything inherently wrong with it. It's just that there is, a lot more cost-effective ways that save time and energy and resources. That
Absolutely. Yeah.
is the
Yeah.
general, marching forward. You can't turn back. You're right. But that's just how the trend seems to be. At least that's how I'm seeing it
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
days.
Yeah.
The thing about companies is that they are just one of the many spaces where we as people technically function, operate, live. It's you don't people don't really correlate working with living, but it does take a significant part of our lives to actually
Hmm.
work. We do spend many years just working, so
Right.
it is a
Yeah.
space where we exist in, and in this
Yeah.
space you can't avoid how do you say interactions with people who may or may not be a problem, an issue, who may not disrupt your processes. And that's what brings me to the next Reddit story, because I have heard of this before, where people are like, I've just applied to a job and they require my criminal records. They need a police report,
Yeah.
and they're not really sure if that's something that they should be doing, or is something that a company could legally ask before you signed up with them in any shape or form. So in this particular Reddit story, somebody shared a email that they received from a company
Okay.
where they
Yeah.
respond with this. Thank you again for taking the time to apply to this role. I may need to look at your background history, credit scores, and this will also include your criminal records, because the data and other information we will provide you is costly and the company cannot take any chances. So it's clear that they've asked for all these details about this person,
Yeah.
but they are claiming that it's due to the data and the information that they'll be providing them if they did perhaps, like, I'm not that's the thing, I'm not sure if this is just about information that they'll provide during the interview process, or if it's information they will provide during, the hiring, after they've hired them. So is this normal, or is this considered unusual? Can they do this?
Definitely unusual. It's unusual in the it's unusual in the time that they're actually requesting this information, because in my experience this information should be, requested. We usually request it before we send out the offer. So
Yeah.
it's quite strange that they're wanting this upfront, especially after we're going to assume that this person has not had the interview yet. It's a matter of they've just taken the time to apply, to the role. But before they can even proceed to the next round, they're being requested to provide all of this information, and it's quite, personal information, so it's quite,
Yeah.
sacred and so forth. And I just, yeah, like I would not advise this candidate to provide this information so early on in the process. And I think every candidate has every right, just to inquire as to why do you need to provide this information so early on, especially since there's no guarantee that you'll get the offer. It only
Yeah.
makes logical sense, to rather provide that towards the end, because now you have an idea that, okay, it's going in the right direction, especially since it is a costly um, process. But yeah, so candidate, please do not. I hope you have not sent this information. But yeah, have you
Yep.
ever had
I
something
hope
similar
that.
like this?
Actually, no. I've never been asked, which I'm kind of glad about because I don't even like jaywalk. So this would
Okay.
be. No,
Yeah,
seriously
yeah.
though, I think the fear of jaywalking is pretty intense for me.
Really.
Yeah, there have been times my mom has just grabbed my hand and forced me, like me, a grown man. I'm talking about me as an adult, right?
Yeah.
My mom just grabbing my hand and then forcing me to cross the street, and I'm like, no, it's red. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's been pretty intense. But
Yeah. Yeah.
I have not been, which is why I was also a bit concerned when I first came across this. It's like, can
Yeah.
they really do this? Because I know there are certain companies that do request this, and even in certain circumstances, I guess we can and do ask for police
Hmm.
reports or the criminal
Yeah.
records, but there are very specific circumstances, right? Is there like an example that we could provide for to highlight this?
Yeah, yeah. In
Just
my knowledge, it's we would ask for this kind of if we would ask for this kind of information when it is a role that
yeah,
would require you to work with really like important documents,
yeah,
especially in the banking, finance, sector and so forth. That is usually the time, where we would actually request this information. But even that, it's only usually requested towards the last stages of the interviewing process. We wouldn't ask this information from, the onset, just because it is quite a costly task. Like we would actually pay for it and so forth. And even that, like we would do it on behalf of the candidate and not the candidate to do it themselves and to also send a screenshot. That's a bit straight. It's
yeah.
quite dodge, actually.
It is a
So
bit
yeah,
dodge.
like it's just really weird that they're being asked to do this. It could be a scam. You never know. So
Yeah,
I
it
would
could be a
definitely
scam.
not encourage. Yeah, I would not encourage, a candidate to go through the process like this. There are protocols in place, and one needs to, if you're not feeling sure about it, then you should definitely ask, for a second opinion before you provide that information to the employer or hiring manager. But
Absolutely.
yeah, so to answer your question though, it definitely does pertain to the kind of work that you'll be doing. So if you're in the finance, or law, sector, then they would require this kind of information,
Yeah.
which does make sense because the work you're doing is really, it's really, um, obviously all work is serious, but it's quite important, like documents. Using trying to find a word, and it's not coming to mind when it comes to explaining the kind of work that one would need to do, and that is why you need to be really careful when it comes to providing this information. But
Yeah,
it's not really for every role that you'd need to do a criminal background check or credit score check. It really does
yeah,
depend on the role. So, yeah.
yeah. But I guess we're in agreement that this early on in the hiring process, no, you don't really have to provide
It's a
your
red
criminal
flag.
records.
It's a red
Yeah,
flag, yeah.
it's a red flag. Noted. Understood.
Yeah.
So, Nan, you are in recruitment. You have tons of experience in this. So I think this is a question that I picked out specifically for you. Uh, so it's right up your alley.
All
So
right.
this Redditor has a interesting little experience.
Okay.
So it's titled "A Recruiter Asking If I Can Accept a Subject to Offer Before Going Forward to Interview. Is this normal?" They've explained, "I just got off a screening call for a consulting company for a software developer role. The
Mhm.
conversation went well, but I'm a little confused about the terminology used. The recruiter said something about a subject to offer, and apparently that means I have to accept an offer, pay, benefits, etc., before I take the interview, so that the client will
Mhm.
proceed with my interview based upon agreed conditions. I find this new and
Mhm.
strange. I've never gone through such a process before, as it's always been interview, then offer. I just want to understand
Yeah.
if this is normal or is this a scam? Is it a scam?
It
Tell
looks like a
us.
scam.
Straight
Recruiters
off the
asking if
bat.
I can accept a subject to offer before going forward to interview. No, that's
Yeah,
weird. Why? Why would you want to sign or, go ahead with that subject to offer? You should,
yeah,
any candidate, when you go through the interviewing process, it needs to, first of all, you need to be comfortable. It needs to look and feel legit. And obviously, this
yeah,
candidate is a bit, wary as to why, first of all, like, is this normal? Why am I, being asked to sign, subject to offer? And yet you've not even gone through the process of the interviewing and knowing, okay, are we, headed in the right direction and so forth. So for me personally, professionally, it looks like a scam. um, and yeah, that's that's what I think. That's what I think.
straight
I
off the
would
bat,
not
it's a scam.
advise. Yeah, I would
Yeah,
never,
yeah,
ask any of my candidates to accept, a subject to offer before
yeah.
going ahead with an interview, because then it just makes one look very suspicious. You know,
It does
um,
just a bit.
yeah,
In fact, they've actually shared a clause from it as well. So the clause says if everything works out with the company's end client, you will be able to accept a full-time employment offer 40 hours per week with a gross, gross annual income of X euros, all inclusive, like travel mobile bonus.
yeah.
And that is the clause that they've sent this person. Does it still sound like a scam to you? Just a bit? Or,
Yeah, it does. It does. Yeah, it does. Because
okay,
even
so
if it's
this
a
just looks more like a
clause,
scam
they
than
could have.
before.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just really strange. I always say go with your intuition. If something feels off, it possibly is, off. Um, so definitely for me, it does look like a scam. It feels like a scam just because I've never encountered anything like that before, especially
Yeah.
being the recruitment, field. So it is really weird as to why this person is being asked to sign a subject to offer before, proceeding with the interviewing process. Um, yeah, despite also they have included the clause in there, they could have just made that up on the spot, like it's so easy to deceive one. So it's just, for me, it's just not
Yeah.
that, it's just not that, believable. Like I would still be very hesitant to go ahead with that. It's like I'd rather
Absolutely.
negotiate with the employer, like, okay, I understand you'd like me to sign, subject to offer, but how about, we'd rather do that once it is a guarantee and I have received the offer. And yeah, that's always, negotiable. If the employer is then still hesitant, then okay, it's definitely a
Yeah.
scam. But if they agree to that and it's like, okay, you know what, it's fine, we understand where you're coming from, let's rather do
Yeah.
this, towards the end, then yeah, then it's fine, it's
Yes.
legit. But this, not legit.
I
Yeah,
mean, it is a two-way street. This we can't approach
absolutely.
it with the mindset of this, that it's only one party basically
Mm,
dictating everything for the other party. So
yeah,
there should be room to negotiate, to set down certain boundaries, to set
absolutely.
down certain
Absolutely.
requirements on your end as
Yeah,
well. That's how you negotiate,
absolutely.
and you get you
Yeah.
get that job.
Yeah, yeah. 'Cause, absolutely. I agree, Kaylis. And also, just to add another thing is, I'm just, thinking now, it almost feels like they are forcing, indirectly forcing this person, to sign this. It's almost like you do it, else we will not, go ahead with the interview. And it's like, but why? Why are you, forcing this, on this person? They should have the liberty to decide as to whether, okay, do they even decide to accept the offer towards the end? So why are you actually gunning them to, basically accept this before they go ahead with the interview? It's just really
Yeah.
strange. But it's just so sad because this does happen, as much as, yes,
Yeah.
it may not be spoken about, but it does happen. And unfortunately, some people, due to various, reasons and just variables and factors, they can be desperate, just to find a job, especially with the unemployment rate at the moment, and you
Yeah.
just end up falling into the trap of, what, it looks, decent, and I need a job right now, so I'm just going to go ahead, and not knowing the danger that actually lies ahead. And then when you're caught into the whole mess, like, oh shoot, I wish I had done A, B, C, and D, or done more, research, and just asked other people, for their opinion. But
Yeah.
then it's come too late, and there's more implications, in place, and it's
Yeah.
just, yeah, unfortunate. Yeah,
It is unfortunate.
yeah, yeah.
Always talk to people. Always go do your own
Yes,
research. When
yes,
something
absolutely.
unexpected like this comes your way and you're not certain,
Yeah,
always ask somebody. Actually,
yeah.
even ask us. It's okay. Just drop a message.
Yes,
If
please.
anyone's available,
Yes.
if anyone's
Yeah,
available, they will
yeah,
answer.
absolutely.
So
Yeah,
yeah, always ask questions. It's good for you. It's good for everyone else as well. Yeah.
exactly.
So I guess the next issue is not so much a unusual
Mm-hmm.
behavior, workplace behavior, but I think
Mm-hmm.
some of the requests that come with it can be perceived as unusual. So it's
Okay.
about how it's required for people in a workplace
Mm-hmm.
to socialize, take part in team
Oh,
building exercises, or network in the industry or within the company, or with stakeholders. So this is a pretty common requirement when you
okay.
are when you have a job. It's pretty
Mm-hmm.
normal to be like, hey, go to this event, talk to some of our donors, or hey, join this social and like hang out with your colleagues.
Yeah.
But there have been instances where people have been penalized for not taking part in these events, for example. And there have been conversations online where some folks would be like, I was unable to show up to this particular work event, and because of that, I essentially feel like I'm being blacklisted from big projects, things like that. So it's very high school mean girlsy right now, but I just wanted to bring up socializing and networking a bit because it's so important for career growth, right? It's so important. But why is it that workplaces put so much emphasis on socializing and networking? Why do they do it?
I mean, I get it from the angle of, okay, you want to, network and, create partnerships with other, companies and so forth. And just to, especially within your industry, you want to know, okay, what is the latest, what is happening. You want to be connected, right? I get it from that angle. But in the same breath, like, one needs to be comfortable in attending those, social settings. Like, no one should ever be forced to attend, a social setting, especially if you are not comfortable, attending one. But when it comes to, socials like that, I do understand as to why they happen. I get it, right? But I don't think it's okay for one to, for an employee or, anyone really to be forced to attend one, especially if you're unable to and you have voiced out your concerns and, you're not really keen on doing that, and you're stating legit, reasons, and your employer obviously is not too happy with your response and they decide to blacklist you. That's not okay. Like, I don't think it would ever be okay, And but at the same time, it does happen, and it just goes to show that one needs to then revisit whether this is the right place, for you, is it the right culture, for you, because you will constantly be invited to socials, and are you going to eventually cave in and attend those team socials, not team social, but social gatherings, um, even when you know, okay, you're not able to, or you're not really up for it, because obviously um, you want to get the approval from your employer and so forth, and you don't want to be blacklisted, or we have the freedom to decide for yourself on whether, okay, yes, I will attend that one, and maybe the next one you won't be able to attend, and that should be fine. Like, it won't be put against you, oh my gosh, this person was not able to attend one, therefore we won't be including them on this next big thing or promotion or whatever it may be that they have. So it's just not okay when that is pinned against you just because you're not able to attend, a social and so forth. So I think there has to be a better approach when it comes to, employers, encouraging their employees to attend these socials and networking events and partnership, events. It's all about, how you approach that, and also, emphasizing that it's not really compulsory, but it would be great if you're just able to just to pop in, for 30 minutes to an hour, even even an hour is quite long, just to pop in
An
and
hour
just to,
is quite long.
it's got long, right? Okay, 30 minutes then
No.
max. But like, like, okay, 10 minutes is too short, but I
Yeah.
think, 30 to 40 minutes then should be fine. Just to know, okay, I was there, I was able to meet, a few people, able to show my face, and then you head out. But even that, like, you should always have the choice on
Yeah.
deciding whether you want to go
Yeah.
or not, and it should not be used against you if you don't feel comfortable in
Yeah.
attending, social. So you should have the freedom to decide. But it's all about, communicating that, to your team, your employer, and just making everyone understand your point of view.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And also, there is the question about accessibility and being
Mm,
inclusive. It's
yeah,
not it's not always so black and white. So there
absolutely.
are those concerns to,
Yeah,
consider.
yeah,
Not every place is conducive for every person, and not every
exactly.
activity can be done by everyone, and not
Yeah,
everyone's
yeah,
into it. So I guess it's not always, the onus isn't always on, an introverted person or a person who is
yeah,
disabled
no.
to, you know kind of navigate that. Sometimes you need to be met in the middle, and that would
Yeah,
be the right way to do it, because
yeah,
otherwise, what's the point? A team needs to work as a team.
yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah, unfortunately, that's all the time that we have today.
Oh
But it
no.
was such an interesting conversation. It's
I
basically just an
was.
extension of, our conversations, and I hope to
Yeah.
have maybe another one, part two. Because let me tell
Okay.
you, the number of stories I found,
Oh,
the
really?
number
A
of
lot?
weird workplace stories I
Weird. I
found.
was gonna say weird stories.
Weird,
Yeah, true.
unusual, so many more that we can
Yeah.
definitely discuss, and we'll figure out if
Mm-hmm.
they're really weird or whether they're pretty normal. And
Mm-hmm.
we'll decide on
Yeah.
that when it
That would be
comes,
great.
when the time comes for part two.
Yeah.
Part two. We're booked in, right?
Yeah, that'd be awesome. That'd be. And our viewers also need to, let us know. Like, they need to let us know, what kind of weird things that they have experienced as well. It'd be really great, just to share that as
Absolutely.
well. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you,
Absolutely. Yes,
Kaylis.
please do. DMs are always open.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you for your time. Really appreciate it. And see you, everybody. Please remember to subscribe, like, and keep your eyes and ears on our pages because we are always, always answering the most important questions that will help you build your career. And we are also listening. So please do message us. Please do drop your questions. We will be more than happy to answer any of them at any time. So take care, and I'll see you next week.
Bye bye.